Education Committee, we will go ahead and proceed, and I'd like to turn it over to Chairman Baumgartner.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. We are going to respond to what you had shared with us yesterday and then earlier today with regard to funding and different aspects of policy. And so we will start with, so we are talking about the substitute for House Bill 2512. Right before we left, you had mentioned $1 million for E-rate. And part of the feedback that we have heard from the Department of Education and from others is that this is not something at this time that they are supporting, and that there is $4 million for school districts to pursue through Spark funds. So we are going to decline on the $1 million. We will accept your position for the delayed state payment of the, which is the delayed fiscal year 2022 state aid payment. So we will accept that. At this time, we will agree with the position you have with regard to the dyslexia coordinator. I would like to share, though, there has been some conversation. When the dyslexia task force formed and came up with their recommendations, one of the recommendations was that each school district would have within their district someone that would be overseeing the training for teachers for the science of reading, that essentially would be a district coordinator. That is very different from this position at the state level. The dyslexia coordinator position at the state level is going to be working not only with the Center of Reading at Pittsburgh State University, but with all the school districts. And that's going to be that contact person, if you will, for the different school districts. So I have heard from some school districts, well, we already have a coordinator, so we don't even need to participate in this. Yes, we do. It's why school districts have a superintendent and schools within a school district have principals. And so this position that we're talking about is a statewide level position. So I just wanted to make sure for those that are listening in what it is that we're talking about with regard to that. We are going to decline your position of removing. So we're going to maintain our position on the Career Tech Ed Transportation State Aid. And I will tell you that part of our discussion actually was motivated by the expansion of what we see, not direct career tech ed, but this in section 6, where we're looking at 6th graders through 12th graders, that alternative education opportunity, those work-based opportunities. We see that there probably would be an expanded need for transportation. In moving on, we are going to decline your position with regard to the $5 million SGF for school safety and security grants. We are going to decline the $100,000 for communities and schools. We would like to have more information with regard to Section 11, which is the virtual aid for the dropout diploma. We are needing more information about how that changes from the status quo from a fiscal note standpoint. So we are interested in learning more about Section 11 specifically with regard to that dropout diploma. And we would You had mentioned this in our very first meeting, but you have not confirmed your position, though we've heard that when appropriations and Ways and Means met, that they had agreed upon for virtual school state aid the amount of the $5,600 in fiscal 23. So we would like a firm commitment on that from you. And then I think we'll stop there with, oh, there was one other thing that we did need. We would like to know with regard to Section 8, the needs assessment, and perhaps the revisers can make it clear for us how what you have identified with needs assessments differs from the Senate position, which would be Senate Bill 362. Is it just the level 1 and 2 that's different? Okay. We wanted to make sure that that was the situation, level 1 and 2. Okay. So that is where we are right now. Oh. With regard to the math program, did want to, I guess we do need to have some clarification with regard to school districts that have 50% or more students that are below proficient in math, level 1 or 2. If the district has already adopted an additional implemented or had just adopted a new program to meet the needs, what is the criteria for that program? Is it that it needs to be something that's available for children outside of the classroom, or is it something that's going to be utilized in the classroom in some manner? If that makes sense. Okay. Now I think we've gone through everything.
And Chairman, do you have any other items?
Yes, I'm sorry. I knew I was forgetting something. With regard to the Promise Act, say if I can find my minute. Here we go. We are comfortable with the new section 1 that was struck with regard to a sunset, a hard sunset. And we are comfortable with the ceiling or the cap being at the $10 million per year. We did have it verified by JG. So this year, if the expense is 5.5 million, 4.5 million will move forward for the Promise Scholarship, but that will just be filled to whatever cap is made through the budget process. So if the agreement is that the cap will be 10 million this next year, that will just be filled with the additional 5.5 million. It will not be 10 million and what carries forward. So the cap will always be what's determined in that legislative process. We do not agree with the striking of it being a Kansas resident. And the reason we don't is this is 100% taxpayer funded. We have put guardrails in it as far as what it is, as far as the family income necessary. They will fill out FAFSA first, and if they're eligible for Pell, partial or full, they will get funding through that. But this is a last dollar scholarship for Kansans, funded by Kansans. And so we have stayed firm on that position. Just a minute, let me check. We know that we still need discussion with regard to that open enrollment or the portability of public funding.
All right, thank you, Chairwoman. I think we can settle some of these items here in about 10 minutes. If we could do that, then we can just proceed and get as far as we possibly can. All right, thank you. All right, we are back on responding to the Senate's offer. Let's start with the Substitute House Bill 2512, the provisions that were laid out by the Senate in response. Let's see. For the item that relates to CTE, we are going to hold off on that. We do think that there's increased in funding for the schools, so we're just going to hold that item for hopefully our next discussion. On the Safe and Secures grant for $5 million, we are strongly in favor of the Safe and Secure grant. It was not included in the governor's budget. As you know, it was not included in the governor's budget last year, but we know what happened in Olathe this year. And what this does, it also provides something in addition to what it had in previous years. It provides for those officers, those security officers that may work part-time at the city, as long as there's a one-to-one, $1 to $1 match. If it's a new SRO, safety resource officer, then they can use it that first year to fund, because some communities, that's where budget cuts have occurred. And we still want to make sure our access points, our windows, our technology, everything is up to date. We do not want what happened in Olathe to happen again. And like I said, it hasn't been in the budget for 2 years, and it was removed by the State Board of Education last year during our request for ESSER money, for that additional money. So we strongly support keeping that there. Next item we have on the Math Nation, or the math program. There were questions on, is it in or outside of the classroom? What we did on the floor was there was an amendment that offered that actually specified a little bit of the details about how a school could potentially opt out. If a school is currently using a program that is not, remember, it's not a curriculum. Hopefully everybody has a good curriculum. But if they're currently using a support program and haven't used it more than 2 years, and that support program is customized to incorporate Kansas curriculum standards, it's evidence based, means that we know it has proven results. It does not impose any fee or cost upon the students. It provides tutoring in multiple language, which the vendor that we talked about does provide that to students, does provide workable apps with 24-hour tutoring opportunities. And it also would have to provide professional development for the implementation of the program, and have been implemented in other states. So, over the preceding 8 fiscal years. So, what we're trying to do and trying to accomplish is raise those math assessment scores that right now are 72% for all students. And for our at-risk population, 93% of our students are not proficient. So we feel, as the legislature, for those that support this, that it's time for us to work hand in hand. And so that's just a little bit more about it. It can be, Madam Chairwoman, used in the classroom, but it's not required to be used in the classroom. And the more teachers incorporate it and use it, probably the better results they're going to find. But our hope is that this would be taken in and used for a couple years. And if we see the amazing results that occurred in Florida in 400 Title I schools, where their achievement test scores went up 17 points, then we know it's a very good program. If we don't see that, then we need to know why. And perhaps the program does not fit best with our Kansas standards. So that's a little bit about that. On your virtual school state aid, the 5,600, we do approve of that, and we accept that offer. So those are the items that we'd like to submit back to you related to budget items. We do have a few more. So just for 100% clarity, we had offered the governor's recommendation of eliminating the delayed state aid payments. And we had, until 2023, we were taking on the Senate's position of that, and you did accept that. So I think we're good on that. Yes. Okay. So for the Kansas Promise Act Scholarship Program, yes, those sound good. There is the item of the residency. We want to pause, and hopefully when we meet back, we can give you a response on that. In response, I know that there are two things we need to discuss before we exit today, but one thing I would like to offer you, and we have not discussed this, Madam Chair, and it was brought to me by our tax chair, and it's House Bill 2747. And I'm going to pull it up for you and tell you what it is. It's really tiny, and it deals with a community college, Johnson County Community College in K-State. So let me give you an idea of what it is. And it was considered a pressing need. And so here is what it is. It's relating to Johnson County Education Research Triangle Authority Act, relating to approved research and education programs. And if you would write down 2747, it's lines 20 of the act. It's very short. I think it may be just one page, maybe 2 pages. Yep, it's 2 pages. So it's on the first page, lines 20. And it says we would be adding 3 words: and other programs. So what that would do is at the Johnson Community College location of K-State, currently the only types of courses or research allowable relate to animal health and food and safety and security. And I think that that's been problematic, and they would like to add the words and other programs. And apologies for that being a new item, but it was just brought to my attention, and we thought it went well with the Promise Act and other items that relate to higher ed. Okay, so open enrollment, would you like to have those provisions be passed out right now so that we can take a look at those open enrollment provisions so we know the differences? And while we're going over that, I will respond to the E-rate. We've certainly had understood it to be something that the federal government could allow for our school districts. It was a good reminder that we do have $4 million in Spark money for ongoing projects. So we do accept your elimination of the $1 million in the event, because the Kansas Department of Education says it's not necessary at this time. So we do accept that too. And Nick, would you like to go over the open enrollment?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Committee, these are the differences between the Senate and the House position for the open enrollment bills that travel through both bodies. The first thing on this chart, the distinction is the school district policies that would be required to be adopted by school districts to establish capacity. So in the Senate position, this position would require on or before January 1 of 2023, similar to the House, that the school district would adopt policies to determine capacity for each grade level, and that the policies shall clearly specify the reasons the board may use to deny the continued enrollment of a non-resident student, and would be published on the website. The House's position goes into a little bit more detail. The policies under the House's position that a school district would be required to adopt shall specify the reasons that the board may use to deny a transfer application or continued enrollment under a transferred application. Prior to adopting a policy under the House position, the Board of Education would be required to hold a hearing on that policy after published notification of the public hearing. and a representative from the Board of Education would present that policy at that public meeting and receive testimony, and then the board would make a determination at a subsequent meeting whether to adopt that policy or not. Both bills would begin essentially with the open enrollment provisions in school year 23-24. So for non-resident students, it's essentially the same between the two positions. The Senate position, you'll see, makes a little bit of a different distinction with regard to how capacity is determined. So capacity would be determined in each school of the school district under the Senate position for grades K through 8, based on the classroom student teacher ratio in each grade level. And then in grades 9 through 12, the student teacher ratio for each school building or program in each school building. Under the House position, capacity would be determined by the school district policy. The two positions differ within the timeline and application process. So under the Senate position, applications could be accepted or would be required to be accepted twice per school year, once in the fall semester and once in the spring semester. So you can see in the chart, the Senate would require school districts to determine capacity between or on May 1st and October 1st for their schools. And then on June 1st and November 1st, the school district would be required to publish the number of open seats that are available. Under the Senate position between June 1st and June 30th. And then again on November 1st through November 30th, this would essentially open up the transfer application lottery process. And then by July 15th and then the respective December 15th, those lottery processes would be completed and transfer students would be selected. Under the Senate position, school districts would inform a parent of any applicant not selected in the lottery or a reason for the denial in an explanation of the denial or the non-acceptance of that student. Under the House position, this timeline would begin prior to the school year and have to be completed prior to September 10. But after September 10, a school district could still allow a transfer student to enroll and attend the school if the school district policy allows. But prior to that September 10 date, transfer applications would have to be accepted in the order in which the transfer application was received. Under the House position, a parent may appeal that denial if denied within 10 days to that school district. And if an appeal is denied, the parent can appeal to the state board within 10 days. Under the Senate position, once a student is accepted as a transfer student, they will be considered students of the school district until that student transfers out of the district or are determined by the school district to not be in good standing in accordance with those school district policies. Under the House position, students may be granted a one-year transfer and may continue that enrollment if approved by the receiving school district. Students under the House position can then be denied continue enrollment in accordance with those school district policies and procedures. Under the Senate position, with regard to siblings, this would be subject to capacity. Siblings are given priority and would not be subject to the open seat lottery under the Senate's position. Under the House position, any sibling could attend the receiving school district if capacity allows and there's no reason for that denial. The children in DCF custody provision is the same between the two bills. The Senate maintained the military children provision. So students who are dependent children of military members are eligible for attendance at any school district regardless of capacity. And the House the House position does not have that provision in there. I'll jump down to the multiple transfers per year. So under the Senate position, a non-resident student may transfer not more than twice per school year, except for children in the custody of the Department of Children and Families. And under the House position, that is not expressly addressed in the bill because of the September 10 timeframe that is under the House position. For the Senate position, it includes that the receiving school district are not required to provide transportation, but may provide a school bus stop inside that district if the school vehicle space allows, to accept those non-resident student transfers to get to that bus stop and then jump on that transportation. Reporting to KSDE would be the same under both bills. Under the Senate position, KSDE would do an audit of each school district's non-resident student transfer as part of its annual enrollment audit. And then the legislative post-audit would conduct a performance audit in 2026 on non-resident student transfers. Under the House position, KSDE would do an audit of one randomly selected school district to evaluate the approved and denied non-resident student transfers, the district's capacity level, and the general compliance with the transfer laws and policies. The Senate position included a statement that nothing in the bill would exempt any non-resident student transfer from the policies and procedures of the Kansas State High School Activities Association, and the House position does not have a similar statement in the bill. And we'd be happy to answer any questions, Madam Chair.
Questions relating to open enrollment? No, it's going to take a little bit to digest. Representative Witten.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like for you to explain the lottery.
Yes, happy to. Just so you know, the Senate bill is drafted after and was modified with considerable effort over a process that's being used in other states. So Senator Dietrich did spend considerable time on this. She was working not only as a teacher, but as a superintendent in another state that used this same process. So if a school district identifies, we'll just use Eisenhower Elementary, that we have 5 positions in first grade, 4 positions in second grade, 3 positions in third grade, and 2 positions in fourth grade. So what they do is during the time period, they accept those applications, the applications that are complete, and they will identify simply with the application whether there is a sibling. But there is no name on it, and they literally put a student number on it based on an application, and they pull it out. And if there are 5 positions and there are 10 applicants, it's a lottery where they randomly pull out the 5 for that. If there is indicated on the lottery ticket, if you will, that there is a sibling, they will identify which other grades that sibling or siblings might be. And if there's openings for them, then they would get a position, one of those positions. And they just continue. It is random. So it's not based on who wrote a check or a donation to the school district. It's not based on anything other than did they get their application turned in time. And then the ticket for each student is put in, and they randomly draw based on the number of seats that are available for that particular class, grade level.
Other questions relating to the open enrollment? We appreciate the chart on that. Yes, Representative Hoffman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the CASA part, now, is that in there to exempt them from, so not allowing someone to transfer and then play sports, or does that allow them to play sports? I'm not familiar with how that.
CASA does have that requirement. If you are attending a school district that is not in the zip code where you live,
right,
they do require that you redshirt or sit out for 1 year. And what this is doing, it is making it quite clear that just because you've been admitted to that school district doesn't mean that you circumvent CASA guidelines.
Okay, all right, that's what I was wanting to ask. Let me see here.
Any other questions on this? I did want to address one question you asked and I didn't answer it. So let me quickly come back to that. You asked about credit recovery and the fiscal note for that. I don't have the fiscal note, but I crunched some numbers for you so you can get an idea of what that impact might be. So if it's $709 per credit and they can do up to 6 credits and they're deficient, at least over 25% of the credits, and we're trying to get these kids to the graduation point, then if you had, I'll take a number and you can use any mathematical number you want. I'll take 1,000 students that might take part in this program. Then we're talking about if it's 4,254, that's $4.2 million annually increase in that fiscal note if you had 1,000 students that took 6 hours. Now that's the maximum 6 hours that you can take. And you might want to check my math because I just did it here on my phone. But the alternative is this: if those students, which is ideal, had not dropped out of school, it would be on average costing the state of Kansas $16,000 approximately per student. So that's $16 million for the same 1,000 students. And if you take in consideration of the wage earnings of those students as they move on and how they join the workforce and what their next steps might be, whether it's community college or whether it's a technical school, a certificate, or just being going straight to employment, then I think that the advantage to Kansas are greater and far exceed the 4.2 million. So that's a little explanation of the fiscal note. But if you just take that $709, multiply it by the maximum credit hours and an estimated number of students, you'll get an idea of what that cost is to Kansas. And thus you could compare it to what it might be had they stayed in school, which is more expensive, but it's certainly preferable. That makes sense.
So would they be taking these virtual courses independently, or would they be taking them with a virtual school that's tethered to one of our public school districts?
Well, so they can't currently be in order to take advantage of this program, they cannot be currently in a virtual school program. They could, that virtual school program, they're either going to do the 5,000 or the halftime, or they're going to do this. This is credit recovery for those that are not in school. I would also say that if they are credit deficient and they are currently in the brick and mortar school, there are schools already deal with that. This does not cover that. It does not cover the students that are still in school and that haven't dropped out. But there should not be a conflict between the virtual schools, and they cannot double dip. So you cannot have a student that qualifies for the 5,000 or 5,600 if it were to pass, and also receive $709 per credit. We do have experts in the room that you might want to check with, but that is the idea, is that this does not allow double dipping.
And that's not my question.
Okay.
So the student has not been enrolled in a school district. I believe the guidelines is for 60 days or more. Is that correct?
60 days or more in that school year, or from the previous school year, or their parent has already approved of them. They've signed a document that says that they are no longer going to be required.
So my question is, who's administering this? Would it be a virtual school specifically just offering these? Not so our virtual schools that are tethered with our public schools, would they be offering this as in addition to kids that are enrolled for credit and continuously enrolled?
Nick,
Or is this separate?
right. Nick, I want you to follow up on my comments. It doesn't prohibit that as long as they're not already part of the 5,000, but it could be an independent agency organization that goes and identifies. One of the biggest problems is actually finding kids that have dropped out. And there are organizations that go out and try to find them. So I don't believe that it would prohibit, but Nick, can you verify?
So this funding stream would be under the current virtual schools that are operating in Kansas under the purview of the State Board of Education. This would just be a separate, a different funding stream for these specific students rather than full-time funding. This would be on a per course basis.
And I would add that we had another provision in our bill, 2512, that was related to credit recovery and actually recording virtual school graduation rates. And that it's true that many times kids come to virtual schools and they are credit deficient. Up to as many as 68% may be credit deficient. This is an entirely different. Yes. Okay. Representative Hoffman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to go back to the timeline difference between the two bills and try to understand on the House side, the reason we set just one time to be able to transfer and the September 10th was for the funding reasons. So we'd make sure that the school that was receiving the student would get the funding for the student. Under the Senate's plan, it looks like to me that if I'm reading this correctly, if they were in the first July 15th lottery, then that school would get the funding. But if they're in the December 15th, they would not. Is that, am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, and those that enroll for fall enrollment and are part of the head count in fall, that funding goes to that new district the following year. That's true no matter what.
Okay, yeah, but it'd be the next, but they do go the next year.
They do go the next year.
Yeah, okay. All right.
The reason we had the two different dates is because we know that sometimes when a student is, perhaps they transition from elementary to middle, it's just not a good fit for them. And so the thought was, or a parent might get a job elsewhere and they want to, next semester, I want to be able to drop you off and for you to be attending school in a closer proximity to where I work, things like that. We did not want a student or a family to deal with what they perceive as a situation that they would prefer to change for an entire school year. So it would give that opportunity to make that change after one semester. So we understand that's an issue. But again, it gets back to that whole notion of picking up kids on a school bus that are within the 2 miles, not funded, but if the bus is half empty, why would you make a child walk 1 mile and 3/4? Pick the child up. So if you have an available seat, you've paid for that teacher that second semester. We understand it isn't that full funding, but again, it's looking at, we try to focus very much during our hearings on how do we meet the needs of children and families.
Okay, committee, we have a lot to consider, and it looks like that we may be able to come back. Do we say 4:30? Would that work possibly for the Senate? Right there.
We caucus at 3:30. We're on the floor at 4, so we would come when we get off the floor. We don't know how many bills we'll be working.
We have to be on the floor at 5. So if even to come out, if you can come out for a few minutes and just you can let us know if you think you're going to be delayed.
I don't think we're carrying any of those. So if we can make it here, and if someone calls us down to vote, then we'll do that.
Absolutely.
So you will schedule that?
Yes. Holly will schedule, and please send out the email to everyone if we're back in this room or not. It will hopefully be 4:30, and we'll keep in communication if there are votes that need to be made and you need to leave. With that, we are adjourned.